If you're thinking about social emotional learning, it's really important to approach all of your lesson plans from an SEL point of view and to think of SEL at multiple levels. One thing that you can do is to start by managing your own SEL practices. So to think about how are you going to handle it if, say, you make a mistake, you're talking through a math problem and a student points out a mistake, or how are you going to handle if students start to cause disruptions, or if the lesson just isn't going the way that you want it to go. So think about how you're going to handle your own times of frustration and how you are going to model for them your own SEL practices. And sometimes even think about how you might be explicit there of actually pointing out, oh, I did make a mistake, and here's what I was thinking. At first, I felt a little bit embarrassed about doing that in front of you. But then I realized, we all make mistakes and we're all learning here, including me. And so let me just start over there. Or how you're actually going to say, you know what? I really care about you all learning this material, and I feel a little bit frustrated right now that the class is really noisy. What can we all do about that together? And this goes back to, again, talking to students as if you all are on the same team, and the goal of the team is for not only for the students to learn, but for you all to learn. I always tell my students, whether it's my college students or my middle school and high school clients that I'm working with, I constantly tell them that I want them to let me know if I've said something that hurts their feelings or is offensive to them, or if I'm using language that makes them uncomfortable, or if they feel I haven't explained something very well, or if I'm asking too much of them. I always am reminding them that I want them to let me know so that I can improve. So even though I have spent a lot more years than they have studying the material and I am the so-called expert, we're all learning for the rest of their lives. So we're all kind of coming from the same place. As you prepare your lesson plan, you can also be thinking about how the kids will feel during a lesson. So not only be thinking about how are you actually going to teach the content, but think about a couple of different kids in your class and how they might be feeling. And it might be helpful to think about kids who have different experiences in your class. So think about the kid who's always raising their hand first and wants to answer the question, or think about the kid who always seems to be quiet, or a kid who might be making a joke or otherwise disruptive. And as you're planning your lesson, think about how each of those different kids might feel during that lesson. And you might want to be thinking about how you will present the material. So for example, if you're teaching math, you might say, some kids are really excited to see a math word problem, whereas some kids see a long paragraph of writing in math and start to feel nervous or scared or bored. And talk to kids about how to recognize and deal with and then move past any negative emotions, and how to try to get excited about learning, thinking about how when you start to be nervous about looking at a math problem or starting to tackle an essay, that you might want to try to turn it around and say, actually, that's my body getting its energy ready for me to tackle something that might be difficult, but that I actually can do. And even just addressing, throwing out a sentence or two like that before you start to teach a lesson or before you start to assign homework, telling them how to handle some of the feelings that they might feel, especially if those feel like negative emotions, and giving them some strategies to move past those negative emotions can be really helpful, not only in helping them actually move past it and getting the work done, but having them understand that you have some empathy for what they're going through. Another thing that's really important to consider as you're designing your lesson plans is to think about the specific SEL skills that you might want to teach. So for example, sometimes people think, certain subjects like English or history are really good subjects for teaching empathy for others. But I argue that you can teach empathy for others in any subject, for example, in science, that's what writing up procedures are for. And if you can focus on that, you want to write up a procedure so that somebody who wasn't doing the experiment at the same time you were would understand how to do that experiment. So put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Or you can teach empathy in math. So thinking about, well, how might you explain this problem to somebody who totally doesn't understand that problem, and pointing out that those are SEL skills. So SEL skills can be taught in any subject, whether you're thinking about explicitly pointing out how to do that, or whether you as the teacher just have some of those skills in mind and are thinking about how you want to approach giving the assignment to draw out some of those SEL skills.